Right then, let's have a look at some of the news that's making the front pages of the international newspapers. I'm joined in the studio by mental health nurse and news analyst Dorcas Gwata. Good morning, Dorcas.
Morning, James.
Where should we start?
I'd really like to start with the situation in Nigeria, and this is the South African Express, which is talking about...
Oh, no, this day.
This day.
Yes, military moves command centre to Maiduguri. We mentioned it earlier in the programme.
Incredible situation. This is the first 100 days of Mr. Buhari in position, and he's moving very strategically. He's positioning the army in the north, monitor the situation, coordinate it and control different nerve centres in the north. And this will give us some confidence in terms of how he's going to tackle the Boko Haram situation. We should have confidence in him because he's a military, he has a strong military background, but it's a very encouraging situation to see. He's gained a lot of confidence from the global leaders. He's had a
nice little boost in Germany over the last couple of days.
Absolutely. We can expect good things from this guy.
Well, we've heard that France, Germany, Canada, out of the guys that were there in Schloss Elmau, they're renewing their pledge to support war against Boko. So he's kind of, not just with his regional contacts, Cameroon, Niger and Chad and what have you, he's getting the international, global support that he's looking for as well.
He is, and France has a very good reputation, well, it has a good history of intervening in West Africa. They know West Africa very well.
Particularly Niger as well.
Exactly. Their states tend to be a lot more chaotic. So in terms of response, there will be some good coordination put together. So this is really, really encouraging.
Do you think this really going to make a difference, simply moving the command up to Maiduguri?
It will, because we were already gaining momentum with damping down the situation with Boko Haram. This will have Boko Haram running on his feet, and wherever they run to, they're going to be trapped. So a good strategic military response is what we needed.
Because that's the city that they really wanted to have as the home if they were to set up a caliphate.
Absolutely.
But Maiduguri was going to be it, so stick the military in there and elbow them out.
And James, to secure the environment for people, we've lost more than 15,000 people. A lot of people have been displaced. So your everyday northerner, the person living in the north, in this region, it's been a very difficult couple of years for them, and I think they'll have some confidence Buhari is doing something about it.
Well, it'll support him because obviously he's from the north. The other big story, I guess, certainly in South Africa, is the situation with Oscar Pistorius. Can't really pick out one paper because essentially they're on the front page of all of them. 304, the number of days Oscar Pistorius, that's the lead on the Star, Cape Times. Oscar's probation shock, which seems a bit bizarre because we knew that this was on the cards. Citizen said only 73 days left for Oscar. Pretoria News, Oscar freedom shock. Reavers folks fear the wrong message is being sent out. The Mercury, murderer serves less than a year. Pistorius wounds reopened. What's your take on all of this?
304 days for murdering your girlfriend.
Now, see, we shouldn't be able to say that, but in the UK, a court hasn't said that. He's only been charged with culpable homicide, and yet newspapers in SA are accusing him of murder.
A young lady died.
That we know.
Gender violence in South Africa is extremely high. And this case received a lot of widespread attention because of who he is. But if you are living in the depth of in villages where you've been murdered by your husband, what kind of confidence can you have in the judicial system? So to me, this speaks more widely to the problems in South Africa.
But Section 276 is the law that applies to everybody. It doesn't just apply to Oscar Pistorius. He doesn't sound like he's rich anymore, so he's not exactly buying his way out of prison. That would have applied to anybody. Do you think the real kind of miscarriage of justice is the fact that he only got 5 years, which allowed this particular part of the section to be applied here?
Absolutely. So the initial sentences was rather shocking to all of us.
That was almost the bigger shock.
Absolutely, absolutely. And the weight of this crime was huge. So we knew from the start, when the sentence was given, that he wasn't actually going to spend a lot of time in jail. That much we knew. But listen, this adds salt to the wounds that were already sort of seething within others who care deeply about gender violence. And this is difficult.
I was talking to Msalisa Masango in South Africa earlier, and particularly referring to the Mercury's front cover, because the picture said, "We have forgiven him." That was the Steenkamp family. And now we're hearing that this is sending out the wrong message. So yeah, I mean, you can see the front cover there. Do you think this is sending out the wrong message and he should have been made an example of? Obviously, he's still got this appeal from the prosecution still pending.
This will remain with him wherever he goes until he goes to his grave. This will, even if he remakes his career again, this will remain with him. It's deeply hurting to parents to lose a child. You know, I work in the health system, and parents who lose children often say to me, parents shouldn't have to bury their children.
Yeah, they shouldn't go
the
first.
Other way around. So the hurt cuts very deeply, and it's been very moving to watch the Steerkamp family. They've been terribly gracious, controlled, but also very emotional about the situation. This was their only daughter, so it's deeply, deeply moving. What happens to the next person who, you know, kills his girlfriend? Is this the kind of sort of sentencing that we're looking at? What does that speak to in terms of the wider issues in South Africa? Terribly distressing. And I don't think we'll be hearing the last of this from the Steerkamp.
I think that's for sure, and certainly over the next few months as we hear about the appeal. Let's look at the Daily Express here in the UK. Migrants threaten to kill truckers. Now, obviously, migrant issues big across the Mediterranean area. All over the world at the moment, in the South Asia seas. It's now on the UK's doorstep too.
It is, but this is a particular interesting story. So this is a Daily Express paper, which in my view is speaking very widely to the raising awareness of the vulnerability that the British drivers, truck drivers, are under. Now, we often need a death, and it takes a death before we sort of move along. But the conditions that they're working in now in France are way different from where they were working 20 years ago. So it's really kind of speaking to the conditions. These are very distressing scenes to see in Calais. The conditions are very hostile. They are very dangerous.
Well, the Songat camp was closed down. You've got thousands of people heading towards the UK. They can only go through the tunnel or cross on a ferry.
They're fearless. They will never lose hope, and they're absolutely fearless. So these conditions are very, very difficult. And I think the Daily Express is simply saying to us, our drivers are functioning under very difficult conditions. This is not an easy situation because it has European implications. And the migrant issues, as you say, James, around the world is very wide open at the moment. People are fleeing in different areas. Some are not necessarily fleeing as refugees. Some are trying
to force their way into the country.
Absolutely.
Because they're saying machete-wielding migrants have made Calais a war zone, with truckers risking their lives every day to bring goods into Britain. So, whereas, I mean, these are people that are going the extra mile to make sure they get into the UK. And
they don't particularly want to stay in France, so they've made it very clear that their destination is Britain.
Less than a minute to go. Career Times. MERS, the Middle Eastern Respiratory Syndrome. It's all over their front cover. I think there's been an 8th death confirmed today, but it's looking as though who's dying from this are specifically old people and people who have been ill with something else. But do you think we should be concerned about this more widely?
Well, I think we should have been concerned about the Ebola crisis equally. We would have responded equally. The people who are most vulnerable in this situation is what we call in medical terms people who have comorbidities. So they've got multiple things going on, and age is quite a risk factor. WHO is moving very, very swiftly, and it should, because these are global issues, but I would have loved to see the same response for the Ebola crisis.
Well, hopefully this won't become an issue, but it's like SARS, it's like chicken flu, bird flu and what have you. Hopefully this won't
and people travel these days, very travel.
Dorcas Gwata, many thanks for taking us through the papers.
Thanks for having me.
You're watching This Day Live here on Arise News. Stay with us.